Thank you so much for joining us today. We are extremely honored and pleased to welcome Dr. Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi at University of Georgia, who is one of the most well-known fiction writers from Uganda. Her first novel, Chintu, won the Kwani Manuscript Project in 2013. Her second book, a collection of short stories, Manchester Happened, was published in the UK and Commonwealth. And Let's Tell This Story Properly as in the US and Canada publication. So there are two different names for the short story collection. And in here we have the Let's Tell This Story Properly edition. It came out in spring 2019. It was shortlisted for the Big Book Prize, Harper Bazaar. Her third book, it was published as The First Woman in UK and Commonwealth, and A Girl is a Body of Water for USA and Canada. And it recently came out in August 2020. Jennifer is a recipient of the prestigious Wyndham Campbell Literature Prize in 2018. She won the Global Commonwealth Short Story Prize in 2014 for her short story, Let's Tell This Story Properly. She's a CHEWS International Writing Fellow 2019 and KNAW NAIS Residency in 2021. She has a PhD from Lancaster University and has been a professor at several universities in Britain teaching English and creative writing. Currently she is living in Berlin, where she is a DAD fellow. Please give a warm hand and welcome Jennifer Makumbi. She will now read from her book and other books as well, and then after that we'll shortly engage in a brief conversation and we will open up the house for questions and answers, which I'm really looking forward for. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for making this long trip. Thank you.
Hello everybody. Can you hear me? Oh, fantastic. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Sometimes I hear people talking about me. Is that me? Sometimes it's so out there. And it's wonderful to be at this university piece. Your place is so beautiful. I don't know whether you get used to it, but as I drove through the campus, I kept on thinking, I'll never lose my temper. So sweet, so beautiful. So I'm so glad to have been invited here. So I am going to read from my latest novel, A Girl is a Body of Water. It's interesting, Americans always insist on different titles for my books. And I think I've given in for the last time, because people in Africa tend to buy both books, imagining that they're different. But actually, it's always just the title that is different. Everything else is the same. The American booksellers, sometimes, for example, they say, the first woman not block in the US. And people imagine, oh, you're talking about the first woman to go to the moon. Oh, the first woman. You know, they would imagine it's not a novel, and it's memoirs. So, but I've decided that's the last time I'm doing it. I hope I'm established enough to say no.
Yes.
You know. Anyway, a body is a body of A Girl is a Body of Water is a novel set in the 1970s in Uganda, particularly 1975. That's when it opens, and this is a time when Idi Amin is in power, and he has got rid of the Asians and white people in 1972. So the whole world was put embargoes on Uganda, and we are quite isolated. But the embargoes hurt mostly the middle class and the people in the cities, because in the villages, people still walking long distances, and there's no fuel. People, okay, we don't get anything that is not manufactured enough in Uganda, because apart from Kenya, which is very close, And so life is difficult for the rich people, but poorer people are still quite okay. Now it's against this background that you find Chirabo, the main character of this novel, who is living with her grandparents in a rural area called Natata. Chirabo is pretty loved because she was born a little bit young, but to a young father who is still in school. So as you know, boys in Africa, if they have a baby when they're still young, they go, Mom, Dad, I made a baby, and Mom and Dad say, oh great, just forget. It's not the same with the daughters. With the daughters, it's not like great. So she's being brought up by her parents who are spoiling her. And she has a lot of uncles, but also there's the village that loves her. But she has two problems. She doesn't know who her mother is. Because as you can imagine, if the father was still in school, Mom was also a child. So there's a reason why she doesn't know who her mother is. And whenever she asks the family, who's Mom, where is she? Family says, oh, we don't know. But why do you mind? You know, grandfather, grandmother loves you, and Dad worships you. Forget her. And she's grown up, asking this question over and over. And because indeed she's loved, she dismisses it. And the other problem is that she feels like there are two people in her. And sometimes one of her flies out of the body because it feels like the body is not big enough to take her. So it's constricted. So sometimes the second self flies out of the body. But as she hits 12 years old, she connects the two. That probably I'm a witch. And probably my mother ran away and abandoned me because I'm a witch. So because of that, and she's getting anxious, she decided to visit a witch. Now the witch is a blind woman. She lives in the village with the rest of everybody, but grandmother especially. Chirabo's grandmother calls her a witch. Now the witch is pretty beautiful for a witch. And her house is exceedingly clean for a blind person. And she seems to know everything that is going on around the village, even though she doesn't leave her house. And men seem to like her very much. She's not married. So you can imagine who is calling her a witch. But Chirabo is unaware of all of this. So she goes to this woman and says, you're the only witch I know. But I suspect I'm a witch, and I would like to find my mother, and I would like to get rid of being a witch. And the woman says, of course I'm a witch. Of course I'll help you get rid of it. All you have to do is to keep visiting me over and over. So that's the premise of the story. But the part I'm going to read is I'm trying to bring out the problems with one, feminism, that it has failed to bridge the gap between working class women and middle class women. In other words, capitalism. Feminism has not worked out how to deal with it. And the other aspect that I want to talk about here is African childhood. When I arrived in Britain, all I saw on TV were African children starving and flies, and I kept thinking, where did they find those children? And so I in this book I tried to look at that, but also the idea that girls, especially I don't know about in this country, but in Uganda, a girl had to look to her beauty for everything. Because if you are not beautiful, then you're in trouble. What's the use of being a girl if you're not beautiful? So these two little girls, they're both 12 years old. But I just wanted to show you how these things play out in their lives. So Chirabo is the main character, but Jiwa is the daughter of her grandfather's laborer. He works in his gardens. So Chirabo has gone to Jiwa's to play. So their playhouse was a space under a canopy of 3 young trees. The girls started by sweeping out dry leaves. Then they tied the flowers they had picked onto the tree trunks. They spread out a sackcloth on the floor and laid down their babies to sleep. Chirabo had made her baby out of banana fiber, while Jiwa had molded hers out of mud. Chirabo also laid out her white plastic doll, although she rarely played with it. She was outside peeling food when Jiwa gasped, "Chirabo, Chirabo, my cause have come." Chirabo placed the matoke in a blue band tin on the fire and hurried inside to Jiwa. Jiwa had been attempting to nurse her clay baby when she made the discovery. She pulled down the neckline of her dress, but because of the buttons at the back, it only came down a fraction. As she tried to lay the baby back on the sackcloth, its head rolled off. Jiwa put the rest of her baby down and poured water in the dust to make mud, which she used to reinforce the baby's neck and reattach to the head. She laid her baby out to here. Now, then she turned around and asked Chirabo to undo the buttons at the back of her dress. She pulled it down and revealed a pale chest. Both Jiwa's breasts pouted. Now she felt the areola of her right breast. Oh, this one. She shoved it in at Chirabo's feet. Chirabo pinched and felt a lump the size of a lozenge. She gasped, "It's real!" Then she felt the one on the left. This one is lagging behind. It's like a pea. Oh, first, the one on the right comes. You will have the impatience of a breast specialist. And then the one on the left comes next. Now, Chirabo pulled down her neckline and pinched the areolas from one to another, but it was just empty skin, which she gathered and pinched, but on release spread flat across her chest again. She was reaching to feel Jiwa's miracle again, when Jiwa snapped her chest out of reach. Dot. Yeah. Now, young breasts are shy. They could go back. Chirabo was alarmed, and Jiwa explained, "If you tamper with them, touching when they have just arrived, they disappear." But her face said, "You have a house, I have breasts. Who is happier?" Okay, Chirabo swallowed the snap and said, "Okay, squeeze them yourself. Squeeze and see if there is milk." Jiwa pressed the areola hard, and a tear peered from the teeth. And Chirabo shrieked, "Mama!" And she held both her cheeks in frozen awe. Jiwa sighed and stretched out her legs like a grown-up preparing to breastfeed. Chirabo sat back dejected. To lift her spirits, she took her banana fiber doll and tried to nurse it, but without a face, the doll was not appearing to nurse. Jiwa lifted her baby to breastfeed. The neck had not healed, and the head rolled off again. Chirabo laughed. Somebody's baby has lost its head. Well, at least it has a face, but someone's, you cannot tell the face from the back of the head. Well, at least I have a proper doll. Chirabo lifted her plastic doll, a present from Aunt Abby, who lived in the city. The doll rolled its eyes up and down like a ball flickering. When she turned it, a cry emanated from the back and a lead labeled Made in China. Chirabo caressed the long yellow hair. Put it on your breast then, Jibo challenged. Why don't you ever nurse it if it's really your child? Chirabo rose to the challenge. She pulled down the top of her dress and put the doll on an indifferent nipple. The contrast between the white doll and Chirabo's black chest was so stark, Jibo burst out laughing. She pointed, unable to speak until she paused to catch her breath. That charcoaly breast, feeding that Muzungu baby, talk about baby snatchers, and she collapsed again. For a moment, Chirabo could not find the words. Now, Jiwa snubbing her house was one thing. The arrival of Jiwa's call before hers was another. But this charcoaly jibe was more than Chirabo could take in a day. She grabbed Jiwa's baby and flung the torso outside. It shattered and the pieces scattered across the ground. Jiwa stared at her, stunned. Then she screamed, "You evil goat!" And she grabbed Chirabo's Zungu doll and she skipped outside with it. There she blocked off a chubby hand and threw it on the ground. Chirabo ran out and chased after her, and off came the second hand, and Chirabo stopped to pick it up. Chirabo gave chase again. "If I catch you, oh, what will you do, Charcoaly?" Oh, there was another leg. Chirabo picked up a clod and hurled it at Jiwa. Jiwa, knowing Chirabo could not dare hit her with a clod, made a show of dodging it. "Don't ever come back to play with me, cow order." Jiwa laughed. She did not mind being cow order light-skinned. And that was the problem. While Jiwa had an arsenal of names emanating from Chirabo's apparent physical defects, Chirabo had none. Jiwa went for Chirabo's eyes. Panda eyes, has no breasts, so she tells lies. "I have a house, my grandfather gave me land." And she tossed her tail this way and that. "It's my house, my grandfather gave it to me." Women don't own land, Jacana legs. "In my family we do." "Oh, that's because you stole us." "Stole you?" Now this was a new insult. "Yes, you Baganda raided us and brought us here from our homes. My mother says you stole women and property. You stole women to improve your looks. Everywhere you went, devastation." "What are you bleating about, stinky god?" Chirabo was confused. Apart from her mother, Jiwa was Uganda too. "Now you are rich from selling us, you show off. My mother says Uganda women were so ugly, young men turned to abducting women from other tribes. All your mother knows is rolling dung. Who buys humans? Firstly, did your mother go to school? No. So, how does she know what she's talking about? Secondly, you stink of dung. Who would buy a stinker? You're just dumb because you don't go to school." Jiwa lost her confidence in the abduction jibe. Not going to school was her sore point. She revisited Chirabo's dark skin. "Kagongolo, your skin is so scorched, you will bite both the upper and lower lip to bleach it with that cream ambi." Jiwa sucked both her lower and upper lip between her teeth and pretended to scour her face with effort. This time, Chirabo ran after her resolutely. Now, Jiwa was not listening where Chirabo was winged. Jiwa kept glancing over her shoulders. As Chirabo caught her, Jiwa threw the torso of the doll at her, and Chirabo stopped to pick it up. At a safe distance, Jiwa taunted again. all your aunts are sluts. What did he say? That is why your grandfather gives you property. What did you say? Guy, public bus, your aunt, Guy, village coach. I see all right? Travis stopped chasing and pulled out a trump card. You know what, Jiwa? It's time my grandfather had a word with your father. You've gone beyond. Jiwa's face collapsed. The consequences were there. She turned and ran out of sight.